everyone, and welcome to episode 720 of Longbox Heroes, the Lamborghini of comic book podcasts. I'm Todd, along with Joe. How are we doing today, Joe?
Do you, Todd? I'm doing great, by the way.
Good.
Do you, Todd, remember the video game, specifically the arcade game 720?
No, was that a skateboarding game? Skate or Die.
Not see Skate or Die, but there was a 720 arcade game that they did port to the home consoles, whatever, right? And I'm going to do my best to explain this. You know a normal joystick for an arcade game?
Right.
Okay. You have that pictured in your head.
Right.
So the joystick for the 720 arcade machine was like a little thin metal stick without the ball on the top, but it just had like a little plastic like nub, if you will.
Right.
And instead of like standing straight up like a normal joystick would, it would kind of like fall back to rest. And to start the game, you had to lift it up into that upright position.
Mm-hmm.
And then it had like the full 360 degree whatever so that you could do your 720 in the game.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
See, I only like to do 720s in real life.
Yes.
To heck with that on the video game. If you could do it in real life, why would you do it? Then I got to trick me, and I had to give up skateboard, Joe. So
that's what it was.
Yep, that's all.
I was more of a longboard guy. I would just kind of cruise, no tricks, sort of thing. Right.
You were a cruiser. I was a thrasher in my day, Joe.
There you go.
So I was a day thrasher, not night thrasher. To make a comic book reference.
So to mention this, and I'll throw this out here real quick at the beginning. Sign up for the Patreon, you get access to the Discord, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when it was discussing in the Discord in regards to the Night Thrasher character from the New Warriors,
right?
And it was brought up that he's named Night Thrasher because he's a vigilante who works at night, and he has a skateboard, and like thrashing or being a thrasher was associated with skateboarding.
Mm-hmm.
As unhip as I was, I thought like the thrashing was like he's thrashing he's thrashing evil or he's thrashing crime. I did not put that thrashing and skateboard thrashing together.
Really? Even
yes. I learned it this week in the Discord.
Oh, wow. Look at that. Educational, too. Fun and educational, our Discord. That's fantastic. And the only reason I know about it, like I said, is because I was back when the definitive Colonel Sanders artist had to do an issue of Night Thrasher.
Okay.
So, like, it was right near as a lot of his jobs were right before the book got canceled. At the time, he would like just fill in, and that's how I kind of like learned about that character, and would not hear about that character again for maybe the Discord this week. So
there you go. Well, what do we got on the show this week, Todd? I hear there's a chance it could be a short show.
Right. There could be slender read of the news, where more all-in news, and also Diamond Distributors' newest opportunity.
Oh, there's that word again.
Yep. Conventions. There's some small ones, and there is a big one, but that's with Barry Bostwick, and then there might be another convention out west. So what we read last week, which was a Namor #1 and Nightwing 116. And we also have another review, which is Epitaph from the Abyss, #1. What we're looking forward to this week, Todd and Joe have issues where we reread Gail Simone's Secret Six in its entirety. And I missed the latest edition of My Walk Down Lois Lane by our good friend Becky, where this week we zig and she zagas. And finally, at the end of the episode, we'll have spoiler-filled talk of the season's finales of both The Boys and Star Wars Acolyte. The episode titles both The Acolyte and Season 4 finale, Joe. Can't wait to talk about them.
Wasn't the episode title of The Boys season finale something different? Oh, well.
I don't know. Maybe.
I'm sure it's lost to time. And I like that you skipped over plugging Becky's segment, but because you had your cute little line there, you're like, oh, got to make sure we get that in.
We're going back. Listen, it's a very special ladies segment. I don't want to miss it, Joe.
That's true. That's true. Listen, it's a segment by a lady, but it's for anyone.
Exactly.
Right. It's not, men, skip ahead 7 minutes or however long it is this week, right?
Right.
Okay. So we've been talking here for weeks about Absolute DC. All the rumor and innuendo and speculation and everything else. But now here we are on the eve, the cusp of San Diego Comic-Con this weekend. We get the full layout, or as much of the full layout as we're possibly going to get. Obviously, we're getting a new Batman, a new Superman, a new Wonder Woman. There was the video that Scott Snyder and Joshua Williamson put out. And the pitch of this is there's 2 universes now. It's like an Earth 1 and an Earth 2, essentially.
Kinda, yeah.
And they give away as much as they can without spoiling Absolute Power, but they obviously spoil Absolute Power.
Mm-hmm.
And they say that this new world is essentially created by something that Darkseid does.
Right.
We know for sure that we're getting the Absolute Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman books, which we've talked at length. Those creative teams we've discussed, before. Scott Snyder and Nick Dragotta on the Batman book, Kelly Thompson and Hayden Sherman on the Wonder Woman book, and Jason Aaron and Rafa Sandoval on the Superman book. But the other thing is, with the other DC books, like, there's still going to be a Superman book, Action Comics book. Like, it's not replacing the existing books of these. Mm-hmm. These new universe books are going to kind of exist alongside of them. And everything that comes out in October is going to have, like, a new jumping on point, essentially.
Which definitely the jumping on point for everything is going to be a good idea. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I do like that.
So that's a good idea. Now, I will say, and again, looking at the solicitations, this is one of the few times where I did really have to comb over the solicitations to make sure that I'm not missing something. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of the creative teams are being shooken up on stuff. And a lot of people that were leaving books are not getting announced of where they're going to. Just as an example, Tom Taylor with October is no longer doing Titans and Nightwing.
Right.
But Tom Taylor is now going to be doing Detective Comics starting in October.
And I heard rumors that he might be doing a sequel to that. What was that Game of Thrones book that he did?
Dark Knights of Steel.
Yes, that I have a feeling he's coming back to that. But go ahead.
So there is one of those that's currently going on. It's kind of like, who's the guy? Sean Murphy, who did the Zorro thing,
right?
And he had the Batman White Knight universe,
right?
So based on the success of the Dark Knights of Steel thing, there's a miniseries that's going on right now. It's not medieval times; it's Viking times.
Right.
It's still under the Dark Knights of Steel umbrella. It's by a different creative team. Tom Taylor's not involved with it, but you make a good point that they could come back to the medieval time under the same umbrella, and that could be like a new imprint that starts there.
Right.
Within DC, like an unofficial imprint, like the White Knight stuff, the Batman White Knight stuff was, right?
Right.
So then Mark Waid is moving to Action Comics, and Action Comics is now weekly starting in October.
Oof.
Right. And Joshua Williamson is leaving Green Arrow, and he has 2 issues. One is a renumbered issue to like Green Arrow, like 250 or 350 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then an annual that same month that is like wrapping up everything that he's done on the book, for however many months it's been that he's been on the book, like 15, 16 issues on it. So that's the only book that's not really getting like a new jumping on point, because he said he's leaving the book at that point. And a lot of these other books have new creative teams coming on with stuff. Not a lot of stuff is being renumbered as number 1s, which I like.
Right. Me too.
But I really have to, October is going to be a rough month in regards to those new creative teams, specifically with what's coming on like Titans and what's coming on Nightwing and some of the other stuff that I get. And I had said here last week that I'm probably going to get all of the Absolute books. And for right now, being that we only know of the 3, we have the one shot that's coming in September. Batman and Wonder Woman are October, and then Superman is advanced solicited for November. DC needs to worry about putting out too much too quick. And obviously, be careful with, how, obviously every plan that DC has when they do something like this, they always have an escape strategy.
Yes.
And I just hope that they let this build. And what was the word that they said in the video a bunch of times?
Joe, they didn't drill initiative into you?
Initiative. This is not a reboot. This is not a new brand. It's an initiative. It's an initiative. It's an initiative. And that's really what they kept hammering home. And I get it. A lot of these terms in comics have negative connotations to them. But it looks like DC, Warner's, whatever, is very firmly behind whatever this idea is. So much so is that it looks as though, and again, we don't have definitive confirmation on this yet, I know they already tried to do this before, DC that is, with exclusive stuff that was sold at just Walmart.
Mm-hmm.
But it looks like, at least with the Absolute books, they're going to try to get them on newsstands, quote unquote, magazine racks, I guess, mass market in Walmarts and Targets come October.
Right. And they're talking about how with the 100-pagers that they tried in Walmart that time, that they learned from their mistakes there. Like, that was a good trial run. So we'll see if they do any, they fixed any of that. Because, like, one that I can think of off the top of my head was they were in the, like, hobby aisle by the checkout, which I wasn't a big fan of. They should be in the toy section where the kids drag their parents to. Do you know what I mean?
Now,
go ahead.
I'm with you, but I think they should kind of sort of also be with the sports and non-sports cards.
Okay.
Like Pokemon, whatever, Yu-Gi-Oh, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that has more of an impulse buy collectability aspect.
Okay.
Where comics would fit into. Not to say that toys don't, but typically, if you're going to go to the toy aisle, you're going there with a specific goal. I'm looking for whatever. They have it. They don't have it. I'm moving on. Whereas if I go to the aisle where the sports and non-sports cards are, I'm looking. I'm like, oh, is it this set? Is it that set? And then Magic the Gathering cards too. Let's just say, for example.
Right. No, I get you.
You're going to look through more stuff there, and people are going to that aisle more with a impulse collectability mindset as opposed to the toy thing.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe put them in both. And I know why some stores have the sports cards not with the toys.
Mm-hmm.
And they're in their own special section. I know, like, the Target by me limits how many sport and non-sport card items you could buy a day. And then they have those same signs over by, like, the Hot Wheels toys and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
Because there's people there looking for those impulsy buys. Specifically looking for the rare collectible, whatever. But it'll be interesting to see how that ends up working, if it ends up working out even. But we're still another at least 3 months away from that happening. Mm-hmm. But if that's part of what DC is trying to do to get these comics in more people's hands, they need to be ready to take a loss on that. And they also need to be ready, if they go through with it and are willing to take a loss by putting them in a Walmart or a Target. And I don't mean a loss. I mean like a loss of, like, damaged product, stolen product, unsold product.
Mm-hmm.
They need to be able to do some sort of incentivizing to the retailers so that the retailers feel that they're not being edged out by a Walmart or a Target for these things.
Right. I will say this. I would add one other spot. Like, I get what you're saying. I think we should just go back to the old, like, tried and true impulse buy area and right above the gum just before the checkout. Do you know what I mean? Like,
My grocery store still has like Archie digests and stuff there.
Right. Well, this is a power move by DC to do.
Yeah.
But I will also say I'm looking forward to Darkseid coming into his own again, because he is the more Drew done right, And finally, I forgot to say, we're talking about where Tom Taylor's going. He's going to be doing detective.
Right, I mentioned that. Yeah.
Oh, actually, I thought you said you weren't sure. I'm sorry.
No. So again, obviously, detective goes on the list, but then I feel bad of like I always like to get Nightwing. I've really been enjoying what Tom Taylor's been doing on Titans. So with the new creative teams coming on, and again, I'll be honest with you, I'm unfamiliar with them. I don't know if they're going to stick around because I'm more like I like Nightwing. I like the Titans. Nightwing's and the Titans. But if Tom Taylor is going to be doing detective, and I can get one book Tom Taylor as opposed to two.
Right.
Picking up a lot of this stuff as well. So
right. And on that, I'll say I'll have to look who the creators are. You know what I mean? And this is one of the few times that the solicit might have to sell me too. You know what I mean?
Right. And that's why it said like this is one of the few months where like I really need to go through. I'm gonna get the October DC book from my retailer because I usually pass on them, because I can get everything digitally. But that's one where I want that physical copy so I could bring it home and like thumb through it and highlight what I need to and make notes in it and stuff.
Right, take the pencil out from behind the ear and scritch into a little notebook. I know.
Put my Homer Simpson banker glasses on.
Yes. Yeah.
So not to be outdone, I guess this is something that's been in the works for a couple of weeks now. That Diamond is starting something new called Fandom World. It's launching this weekend alongside San Diego Comic-Con. Diamond, through this fandom site, are going to be offering some of the San Diego exclusives directly to the consumer through their site. And it's set up as and I haven't gone through the site yet. Now, I will say, in the interest of fairness and transparency or whatever else, this was sent to me a few weeks ago, but it had not launched yet. It was just kind of like the website was a landing page. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, well, there's not really anything I could do here. I signed up for an account, mailing list, whatever. But you have to put information for your local retailer in if you have a local retailer. And your local retailer is going to get like a 10% referral thing of anything that you buy through Diamond, through Fandom World. Now, the San Diego Comic-Con exclusives that Diamond Previews is doing is the start. But then the future is going to be that a lot of back catalog is going to be available there. A lot of like other stuff that you can get through the Previews catalog. And the way that Diamond is kind of selling this is like, hey, maybe your store isn't huge, right? Mm-hmm. Or maybe there's some crazy statue or something. And instead of us shipping it to the retailer and then you having to go to the retailer and then you got to take it home, we're going to cut out the middleman. You could order it directly from us. And your retailer is still going to benefit as though you purchased it through them. Now, granted, not as much, but that's less ordering, less money up front, less, showroom floor that these items have to take up. And again, I think it also, if this is not our store, but I'm sure this is happening because this is something that happens maybe in other stores where somebody goes and puts their Previews order in, and it could be something as just as much as a book or a shirt or a statue or a toy or whatever it is. That person puts the order in through their retailer. The retailer puts the order in through Previews, through Diamond. Diamond sends it into the retailer, and that person never shows up to the store again. Mm-hmm. Or that person shows up, and they don't want it anymore. Or it ends up being late, and the person's like, well, it's late. What do I do now? Right?
Right.
And now the retailer has to explain. Now the retailer is the middleman between Diamond and the person who wants whatever this item is. I don't know how often I'm going to use it. I'm definitely going to look into it just to see what's available, just on a regular basis, just if random things come up.
Right.
But it's Diamond trying to do something.
Yeah. I like the idea of free money for local comic shops with no work. You know what I mean? Like that's great. Without their effort, it's kind of like a residual on the back end. I think it's for everything that you said, plus that then they don't, like, shops don't have to keep their money tied up in stock that they're not sure they're going to sell, like, because nobody's in a comic shop's going to go, oh, I'm not getting, and I know, like, they don't have it, but you get what I'm saying. Like, this is a popular item. This is a Spider-Man toy. It's probably not something retailers are going to go, oh, I'm not getting that. But if it's something, like, unique, like you said, that's going to help a lot, because no retailers will be like, oh, I'm going to grab that and just let that sit on the shelf and collect dust, kind of a deal. But where I think a lot of this coming from is this seems like a Hail Mary, I don't want to say desperation thing for Marvel, but Marvel seems, or Diamond seems to be losing a lot of, like, bit by bit, they keep getting stuff stripped away from them. And I think this is a way they think they can go to remain relevant, as of worrying about losing retailers using them as a distributor, where it's like, hey, you could still use us, and if somebody buys through us, you'll get 10%. You know what I mean? Like with this, and it keeps them from jumping ship, if that makes any sense.
I don't know if you remember this from early in the pandemic, and when this had come up, I was speaking to a local retailer about this. Mm-hmm. Remember early in the pandemic where before Comixology got folded into Amazon?
Yes.
They were doing a bit where, listen, we know you're not supposed to go out. We know that you want your comics. We know there's 2 months where no books came out even, but now that things have picked back up again, not a ton, but still, we get that you don't want to go to your comic book store, but you still want your books. You sign up for this program. You'll get the books that you normally get digitally, and you put your retailer's information in, and they'll get a little bit of a kickback of whatever you're getting.
Mm-hmm. I remember that.
And that was a program that was announced and then went away within 3 months. Right. It was announced, and then quietly, just 3 months later, wasn't a thing anymore.
Yep.
And I hope that this does not become that, but it could.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know. So good luck, to retailers. Good luck to Diamond in the hopes of, not losing all of your fan base completely. We talked a little bit last week, of course, about the different distributors in regards to books and everything else like that. It'll be interesting to see if this ends up being a success. And then you see Lunar and Penguin start doing something similar, or they have enough of the market share with the publishers that they have that they don't need to do this.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see.
Mm-hmm.
There is some conventions this weekend. We've got GalaxyCon in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty jammed up show. Ed McGuinness, Jed McKay, who's got the new hot hand at Marvel these days, John Romita Jr., Ron Mars, Kevin McGuire is going to be there.
Ooh.
On the media guest side, it's pretty jammed up as well. William Shatner, a name I feel hasn't popped up much at all lately. In a lot of places like this, star of My Cousin Vinny, amongst many other things, the lovely Marissa Tomei is going to be there.
Oof.
What was that?
I like her. I'm a big fan of My Cousin Vinny.
Star of Dylan Dog, Dead by Night, Brandon Routh is going to be there.
Yes. Claim to fame.
Mitzi's son, Pauly Shore, is going to be there.
I thought you were going to say Mitzi Russell for a second.
Barry Bostwick is going to be there.
Joe, in the Megaforce Facebook group, somebody was like, thank you, Megaforce Facebook group, for showing me this movie. And because of that, I went to a local con or wherever he was, and he met Barry Bostwick, and he got with the thumb kiss out. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they did it together. So I know Barry's up for doing those photo ops.
Now, I don't want it to happen because my Barry Bostwick fandom comes from Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Right.
But I wouldn't be upset for you if this current resurgence of Megaforce makes Barry Bostwick now more known for Megaforce than Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Listen, for most of his career, he's probably known for Rocky Horror. But on the tail end, it's the twilight. You come in with something big and you go out with something big. You know what I mean?
And and listen, I don't want to pigeonhole him. He's been in a bunch of other stuff. He was in Spin City and a bunch of other shows. But genre stuff,
right,
unique stuff, the oddball stuff, it begins and ends with Rocky Horror Picture Show and Megaforce, right?
I'm still looking into getting the comic book rights of Megaforce, like Sean Murphy did with Zorro. So,
oh my goodness, how was there not a Megaforce comic book, Todd?
I don't know. But somebody in the Facebook group looked into it, and I think the America rights somehow have reverted, like somehow Disney has them. So that's why I'm like sad. But if I could get the rights to it, I would in a heartbeat mortgage my house and get the definitive Colonel Sanders artist to draw a Megaforce comic with me.
Gotcha.
Oh, so good.
Also this weekend is the Corpus Christi Comic Con in Corpus Christi, Texas. Hardcore legend Mick Foley is going to be there.
Great birthday, by the way.
Rodney Ramos is going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And Sean McKeever is going to be there. Now, again, not a huge convention, but I only bring this up because a couple of weeks ago when we did the road trip out to Root Beer Wrestling in Ohio, we had a lengthy conversation about, like, hey, what's Sean McKeever been up to, right?
Mm-hmm.
I forget how it even came up, but, like, all four of us in the car, me, Brett, DJ from We Need Wrestling, and Adam, your co-host on Porch Talk, and my co-host on At Odds with Wrestling, we're like, yeah, Sean McKeever, like, he was like a really good comic book guy, and he's got like a graphic novel series, like a youth or like preteen thing that he's doing, and he just had like a backup, like one of the big and again, I feel so bad. We do a comic book show. What's the big vampire thing that they're doing at Marvel right now?
Blood Hunt.
So there's like he has like a story in some sort of like Blood Hunt annual or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Sean McKeever, underrated guy from the early to mid 2000s, and I'm glad to see he's back doing stuff, back on the convention circuit. If you're in the greater Corpus Christi area and you're going to this convention, tell him that we're glad he's back. We wish he never left, but we're glad he's back.
Right.
And something going on in San Diego this weekend, too.
Barry ain't there, so who cares?
Right. But the links to all of these shows this weekend are going to be in the notes for this episode, along with information about the soon-to-be-named network at soon-to-be-named-network.tumblr.com. Anytime any of the shows in the network go live, of course, you could find them at their own individual websites. Of course, you could find them through the podcatcher of your choice. But if you want one handy-dandy stop that you can get them all, that would be soon-to-be-named-network.tumblr.com. And that includes, but not limited to, this show that you're listening to right now, Longbox Heroes After Dark, Puzzle Warriors 3, Profane Arguments, Porch Talk, Wings on Wings, At Odds with Wrestling, We Need Wrestling, Final Wrestling Place, and if any of these folks show up on any other shows and they let me know that they did, we'll make sure to put them there so you don't miss all your favorite folks from the soon-to-be-named network showing up on other shows outside of the network.
Right.
Also, check out some of our friends and the stuff that they're into and doing around the internet. Mike Sterling's blog over at progressiveruin.com. Our friend Kevin's blog over at helionsteam.com. Rick Williams, the Chop Shop at freekaratechops.storeenvy.com. Jason Sandberg's Jupiter is still available a la carte through his Indiegogo. Purchase that there. Chris Runt's Battle Monsters, also available through his site, fortressofcomicnews.com. One half of the Mean Twins, Davey of the band Cave People, has his self-published comics over at cavedomaincomics.com. Be sure to check that sort of stuff out. And if you do not have a comic book store in your area, or you do not have a good comic book store in your area, let our store be your store. Comics on the Green. I have the Facebook page linked up there. Dave and the crew are going to let you know when the books are in, always on a Wednesday. There hasn't been a delay in quite some time, knock on wood. They're going to let you know when the final order cutoff dates are for some of the new hottest and greatest titles that are coming out. I'm sure when those final order cutoff dates come for those DC books we were talking about earlier, if we don't get a chance to remind you, even just like Dave's Facebook page, the Comics on the Green page, to get those reminders, get those notices. And hey, while you're there, sign up for the mail order subscription service. Get your books mailed to you weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly. I almost went, I couldn't get to the store last week officially. And I was going to have my books mailed to me this week. But I go, you know what? I'll just get an extra big week next week and I'll treat myself, right?
There you go.
Right. And if you do get something from them, there's a chance that you can get a sketch on the package from our good friend Becky, who we're going to turn things over to now for my walk down Lois Lane.
Welcome back to my walk down Lois Lane. Last week, we talked about space-dimensional best boyfriend ever Herco, who treated Lois better than Superman ever has. So let's have another story with him. This is issue 57, also from 1965, so let's dive in. Jimmy Olsen finds Lois daydreaming in her office and asks her if she's thinking about Superman. She tells him no, she's actually thinking about Herco, because she feels so guilty about leaving him stranded waiting for her. They have a quick recap on what happened in issue 54, and Jimmy Olsen tells her if she feels so bad about it, he'll go with her to Dr. Alder's office, and they can make another peephole and she can check if he's okay. Dr. Alder isn't there, so they turn on his machine, and she can see Herco is still waiting for her in the same spot, like Fry's dog from Futurama, so she feels guilty and opens the portal and runs inside with Jimmy following. Herco is excited to see Lois, and in broken English tells her she must be back to get married. Before Lois can tell him no, he drags her off to his village with Jimmy following behind. He introduces her to his family, and outside his next-door neighbor Zaga is crying because she has always loved Herco and wants to marry him. As Herco runs off to find people to attend the wedding, Lois tells Jimmy to help set up Herco with Zaga. She tells him to court Zaga, and Jimmy replies, and I quote, "What? Olsen, the guy with 100 beautiful dolls sweet on him, courting a monster? No." Lois tells him, "Don't be a coward, what would Superman do?" And Jimmy agrees, but none of his dolls back home better find out. He flirts with Zaga and gives her some flowers. The old Olsen charm works, and Lois tries to get Herco to pay attention to Jimmy and Zaga, but he only has eyes for her. He tells her they will do the health test, and once she passes, they will marry. The health test is to stand on a platform and the monsters bash you as hard as they possibly can in the head with a club. Lois likes her brain where it is and asks Jimmy to help her, but Jimmy tells Lois all of his charm and Olsen pheromones have done is made 101 dolls for him, so she's kind of out of luck. Lois applies her makeup and prepares for her fate when Herco starts to feel dizzy. He's allergic to Earth's cosmetics, and the more Lois applies, the sicker he gets. Herco cools off the wedding, and with that news, Zaga dumps Jimmy, and the two rush back to the portal to get home. Lois is happy Herco has a companion now, and the issue ends with Jimmy upset he was jilted by Zaga. So this story, as well as the first one with Herco, are both in issue 113 from 1971. That is an annual, and it has several stories. I honestly think that Jimmy Olsen having 100 girls in love with him is the most unrealistic part of Superman. But I've never really cared for Jimmy Olsen. I guess Dorky is cute. But tune in next week for some more Lois Lane.
Thank you very much, Becky. And again, I don't want to tip my hand too much and call Becky a liar, but we're not going to be talking about Lois Lane next week.
What?
But I do love the idea of whatever race Herco and Zaga are, their health test.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very Most Extreme Elimination Challenge-esque. And I think I have the same aversion to Earth cosmetics that Herco does.
I do too, or that's mace they're using. I'm not sure. I don't know, but
no, I'm very so. My wife doesn't wear a lot of makeup, if any makeup at all. And there are people that do a very good job of blending and wearing an appropriate amount of makeup. And there are people that are not. And cosmetics definitely, when you're not around them all the time, definitely have a smell to them. It's very noticeable.
I will say be careful, because if Becky's listening to this segment, might want to do a cosmetics section during this show, a segment, because there's nothing I like to do more than like roll out fake cosmetic facts in front of her. And it just makes her go absolutely crazy. Like, you know, the whole thing where we were winding her up with the fake, with your skin regimen?
Yes.
Right, stuff like that, where I just walk in and be like, just like, yeah, like you just use, 3-in-1 shampoo, conditioner, and whatever. And she's like, no, you have to. Oh my God, it's the best. Give it a try sometime, Joe.
No, listen, I'm not in the business of purposely riling people up. That's not my not my forte.
Want to steal my bit? Got it.
Exactly. All right. So let's get into what we've read from this past week. Todd, where would you like to begin?
I'll start with a Namor, number 1, which I think was the book we were both looking forward to most, written by Jason Aaron, and I don't have the artist right in front of me. I lost the title.
So there was 2 different, because there was like the main story and the flashback stories, right?
Right.
Paul Davidson and Alex Linz were the artists on this.
Right. So, like you said, it's told in 2 times. Young Namor learning, because obviously he's different than everybody there. He's looked upon as a freak kind of a deal. And the young kids want to include him and take him to this, danger undersea lake kind of a deal. And things go as well as you can when the people who are usually throwing rocks at you want you take you somewhere, leads to what it is. But then in the current section, which is more of an education to me, because I didn't know where Namor was after all the Avenger stuff that Jason Aaron was doing, but he's in jail, for another one of his, fights against the landwalkers kind of a deal. And he's in like a high security prison. And for some reason, he's kind of forsaken water. But obviously that, makes him strong, and they put him near the ocean so he can see it, but, they can't get to it. But even when he can, it's like any water, he's like, he doesn't want to do it. And I find that completely interesting. And then some Atlanteans come to break him loose, and we find out that maybe they're not there to break him loose, but to bust him up a little bit. And then Stingray comes to fill him in about what's been going on with Atlantis since he left. I thought this was all a cool introductory issue, get me caught up. Lots of interesting things in the flashback. I like the bit where Namor is swimming across the city, and in a 2-page, pun intended, splash, we get the bit where he's talking about everything that's along the way. I'll just throw a few out, from the salmon shepherds tending their flock to the pickled old pirates with barnacled fingers and anemone beads on beards. It's like Jason Aaron set up in just exposition in 5, 10, a dozen or so blocks, a whole world that he can bring any of these in or out at any given time to do to that world. And I think he did a great job of building it up and making me want to see what's next in this mini series that he's doing.
For sure. And you mentioned, of course, the thing right on the, the main cover is Namor looks to be in prison garb, and he's busted up, and and that's where we start the issue, and we don't know how Namor got there, and maybe we'll find out, and maybe we won't, but that's not the important thing to the story, and I think that's a really good way to jump things in, to grab your attention. The world building in this, right? I will admit, I know next to nothing about Namor, okay? So everything that Jason Aaron lays out in this, for the most part, could be malarkey, could be phony, could have no roots in anything beforehand. But knowing Jason Aaron, it has little tiny roots somewhere.
Right.
And he decided to, pun intended, water those to make this rich tapestry that Namor is, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And, and not to spoil too much about what the story is, and it does get a little bit into it in the solicitation, so we're not spoiling a ton, but the reason that Namor has made the decision to stay away from water for whatever reason. But word gets back to Namor that the undersea kingdoms are being ripped asunder. Mm-hmm. And the seven seas are now being looked at as their own separate nations. And by doing so, that is going to make them able to be targeted directly by the surface dwellers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Namor's job is to keep the seven seas together as one thing, where he was the king of everything and now he's not. So it's him going to regain his crown, the thing that he doesn't want to do, but he's doing it for the betterment of all of the sea life, world, etc. And that's a really good hook too. And again, I'm not intentionally putting a lot of fish puns in this. It just happens to be working out that way.
You're very fluid when it comes to these jokes, Joe.
And the artists that they chose, I think, were really good as well. Again, artists I'm unfamiliar with, but with both the main story and the flashback stuff, they really do a really good job of kind of differentiating things where it's not as jarring when it's moving back and forth between the two. And I also like that while Namor is, at least in this issue, being painted as someone who is sympathetic, and that we're sympathetic to his cause and his plight, and we want to see him be successful, he's also got a mean streak and might not be a good person.
What? The way he handles the kids who kind of stab him in the back, that was just a kingly way of doing it.
Yes.
But I will say, reading this, and as soon as they did the whole, you have like the seven people are rising up to the kingdoms, blah, blah, blah. I got and it's, a lot of people have kind of done their version of it over the years. Tom Taylor, as we were talking about Dark Knights of Steel. I have a vivid Game of Thrones feel to this. Like, he's going to go down and who's going to sit on the Atlantean throne. And there's a couple other things in here that kind of lead me to that. But either way, if that is what he's doing, which he may not be, copy an A, get an A, so.
Right. And I don't know no Game of Thrones, so all of this is new to me. Right.
Right.
So one of the other books that we read from this past week was Nightwing number 116, written by Tom Taylor with art by Bruno Redondo. I think you had called this, and it's right on the cover, of course, that Nightwing is going to get the assistance of Boston Brand, a.k.a. Deadman, for assistance with overcoming his fear of... And again, it's not a fear of heights. It's like easier to just say fear of heights, but it's a fear of him leaving his feet, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And
that's the best way. And we kind of discover that it was intentionally done to him. And we see how far-reaching Heartless's plan is and has been. And now to frame Nightwing for what has been done. And knowing that Nightwing cannot answer the challenge that Heartless lays out without exposing himself as Nightwing, it's an ingenious plan. And this is one of those, how is Nightwing going to get out of this one sort of things. Okay. Yep. And we get two great bits in this issue. One, obviously, I'm not going to spoil. The other one where Dick is like, well, listen, if I give myself up and I expose that, because Dick has been framed to be Heartless, and he's not. The only way to prove that he's not Heartless is to come out and say, I'm Nightwing. And by doing so, he has to essentially unmask the rest of the Bat family. And Barbara's like, no, I already asked everybody. They said they would absolutely do this for you, no questions asked. Right?
Yep, that's a great bit.
Such a good moment, right? Mm-hmm. And then we get the moment at the end, that last page moment, which is a bit of a... Listen, it was one of those things that I felt could happen. And when it did happen, I still thought it was really awesome. And I'll be interested to see how it plays out in the next issue. But it was, I feel as though it was a secret homage to an episode of the 66 Batman TV show as well.
I'll say this about that, and I won't spoil it.
Right.
It's something I don't know if they've ever done before. You know what I mean? That way. But when it happened, I immediately got goosebumps. I'm like, This is so awesome. It's ridiculous. And it's just so, and the way, it's done by Bruno Redondo, because that man knows how to frame a picture, if you will. That is so great. And then I'm with you on the Bat family, like saying we'll give up our cowls for you. And I was like, that was great. And then maybe and I won't give it away, is maybe my bit is when, after Dick's trek through the mountains, just the way it goes when he gets where he's going is so great that the dialogue between people in that is so perfect for the moment that it's in. I'm like, I love it. And then the overall bit where we see how much Tom Taylor has laid down the groundwork for the framing of Dick Grayson. Like they put it together in 2 pages, and you're like, okay, he's been doing this book since like issue 87, maybe 88.
We are, and again, I don't know the exact number, but he has definitely been doing it for the last over 4 years.
Yep. And there hasn't been more than 3 issues, it seems like, where a beat that he put in isn't something that is to frame Dick Grayson later. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's like this. And then you find out about his, Zuko the mayor, and you find out about this, and you find out about that. And it's like, it blew my mind when he rolled it all out on 2 pages. I was like, I hadn't realized the giant web that he had weaved, and it's fantastic. But overall, Tom Taylor, pretty good guy when it comes to writing. So the other book that we're going to discuss is new in stores this week, and that would be from Oni Press. The official order title of it is EC, and that's like the old EC Comics sort of thing. But it's Epitaphs from the Abyss. I had picked this up or wanted to get this because Jason Aaron was going to be doing a story in this, and I'll say this right here. I did not know that the Jason Aaron story was not going to be in issue 1. It's going to be in issue 2. Right.
So we read this anyway. It's 40 pages. It's 4 different creative teams. It's essentially like 10 to 12 pagers of quick hitters for horror stuff. And we've talked about this before. I love horror movies, but a lot of times, more times than not, horror comics don't hit for me. Mm-hmm. And I liked this, but I didn't love it.
Okay.
Because I feel as though, while a lot of the stories were modern, it was a lot of classic stuff that you've seen in a Tales from the Crypt type book, and that's what these comics are an homage to, right? Where there's the creative person, they can't do their creative thing, somebody else who they see as lesser than them does a creative thing. Of course, it's great. They kill them, they take credit for it, and then a horror thing happens, right? Mm-hmm. Then there's a political one, and that kind of maybe a little bit too close to the way that political stuff is going on in 2024, and I definitely think that was the intention. And then you have the other story in there that kind of puts a grotesquerie on whether you are for or against vaccines, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So, obviously when a lot of these stories were being done back in the 50s and early 60s, I'm sure a lot of that stuff was allegories for stuff that was going on along those times. And I could definitely see some people really being like, oh, I'd like this horror twist on like somebody changing their political views, or, what the anti-vaxxers see the vaxxers as, and vice versa, in a very grotesque sort of way. Maybe it was just a little bit too current for me, if that makes any sense.
It is. Let me give you my quick take on it, because I wasn't big on this issue. First of all, for one, because and this may shock you, of like, since I got into Vertigo back in the 90s and just like went backwards into Swamp Thing and stuff like that, and Sandman early on being the horror book that it was, a lot of people forget, straight on horror early in that book. I liked horror comics because it's a horror that I could read without icking myself out from gore. Do you know what I mean? Because
Okay.
on the page, gore is easier to take than in the movie with the fake guts and stuff like that. So I always like horror. I like EC flashbacks. I like this. But as I read this, like you said, it is a modern take, and I thought they were a little too heavy-handed on some of the messages that they were giving. And I'm not against their message, so I don't want that to come out the way. It's like, oh, I don't believe in this, I don't believe that. I was just like, you were a little heavy-handed on that. And then my kind of biggest problem with the issue, it was too bright. It was too bright for a horror book.
Okay.
But, and especially since we got the advanced copy digitally, I don't know how it looks on the page, you know what I mean, to be fair, but in the digital copy, it looks too clean, it looks too crisp, it looks too smooth, looks too bright for me to be scared by anything. And just, that's kind of where my thing was. And I thought some of the endings were a bit, either predictable or just no punch to them. So I wasn't a big fan of this first issue. But that being said, there's many issues in another miniseries where certain writers may get me. Just nobody. There was three stories or four stories. Nobody got me in this one.
Right. So there was a fourth story. It was like the family, where the family's all tied up and the one member of the family has a gun, where either he picks a member of the family to kill, or he has 5 minutes to make the decision, or somebody outside kills the entire family, right?
Right. Which is another thing, maybe, and not to knock any of the writers, this is a story I've seen 7 times already, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, well, how they're going to do something different, and to me, it's a little different, but not enough, if that makes any sense.
Right, and there was good creators on this. The political one was written by Chris Condon with art by Peter Krause. The family one had art by Phil Hester. The vaccine one was written by Brian Azzarello. Mm-hmm. And again, I think another part of it is, and I get that they're going for more of an anthology thing, and we've read some horror stuff here on the show, most recently and most notably some of the stuff that Kyle Starks has done, and I think it works better where it's a more fleshed out narrative. Mm-hmm. Whether it be like a 3-issue or a 4-issue miniseries, or even just one issue that tells us a beginning and a middle and an end and gives everything time to breathe. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm just not an anthology guy.
I am an anthology guy. I love a good anthology, and not because it has nothing to do with horror, but that was why I used to like the old Christmas specials from a lot of the big twos, you know what I mean, from Marvel and DC, because you would get 8 Christmas stories, or you'd get 8 holiday stories. But in that, that time of reading those and anthologies of the same type, is at least in my opinion, I find that the hardest story to write in comics is the short story, because you have 4 pages, 6 pages, 8 pages, depending on what it is, to get your setup, to get your meat, and then your payoff. And to me, and that would be why I would like a lot of those anthology books or short story books or the holiday books, because it would be like, all right, there's 8 stories in here. 3 were terrible. 2 were good. 1 was really good, and 1 was great. And that would give me my trial run to find artists and writers that I would go on to be like, if you could wow me in a 4-page story, I will follow you when you have 12 issues to flesh it out, if that makes any sense. So I do believe this is the hardest job in all of comics to do.
Yes, you make a really good point there. And there is another one that's coming out this week as well that's called Cruel Universe. That's more of a sci-fi horror bent, if you will. Right. Mm-hmm. And I'll just mention it here because I think I saw them tweeting out about it the other day. As we're sitting here talking about anthologies and things of that nature, I think there's a DC Pets one that's coming out here soon.
Right, I forget the name of it off the top of my head.
Yeah, and that has it's It's Super Pets Special Identity Crisis.
That's a good name.
Okay. And this is one that kind of slipped through the cracks for me. But there's a story in it that's written and drawn by Kyle Starks.
Kyle Starks, yes. So yeah. I'm definitely getting that.
Yeah. So again, just a heads up there. You know, obviously a lot of times it's a creator, and you mentioned about the Christmas specials, holiday specials, things like that. A lot of times they're Marvel or DC, so a lot of times they are characters that we already have some sort of knowledge, some sort of something for. Obviously, with a straight up horror where we don't have an idea of who this character is and what their motivations are, if they don't get all that across in those 10 pages, then maybe we're not coming back.
Exactly. We don't have the investment right out of the gate. If that's Batman in 10 pages, you don't have to worry. You don't have to get me excited about Batman.
Yeah.
He's there. So I get what you're saying, yes.
Right. But if you are a horror fan, if you're an anthology fan, you got two choices this week, Epitaphs from the Abyss and Cruel Universe. I will definitely be sticking around for Epitaphs of the Abyss #2 next month to get the Jason Aaron issue, just to see what he could do and then see who the creative teams on some of the other stuff are as well. And then we will certainly go from there.
Right.
But that is what we read from this past week. Let's get into what we're looking forward to coming out this week. If you head over to longboxheroes.com every Tuesday around noon Eastern time, we put up the poll post, which is a link to all the books that are coming out this week. Whether you get your books in print, whether you get them digitally, whether you get them sent to your home, however it is you get your books, be forewarned, be forearmed, know what's coming out this week. Todd and I attempt to guess what the other is most looking forward to coming out this week. Todd is currently in the lead over me with one correct guess.
Yes.
And let's see how things shake out here.
Yep, I'm looking over your list, and once again, I think you have more books than me, Joe. Okay.
I do.
I like that. You're spending more money than me. Like it. Right. Is the book that you're looking forward to most Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1?
It is, and I think that's the book that you're most looking forward to coming out this week as well.
It is, because Nice House by the Sea kind of would be there, but obviously it's Jason Aaron on the Turtles. But then my brain has to go back into Nice House on the Lake mode and try to remember stuff. So we're going to go in and see if this is a clean slate, because this is going to be a different house, or if they're going to tie in, and then I got to remember stuff. Like, I'm kind of like iffy on that. But I will say, if you get to your local retailer and you get the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles book, ask and see if they have the mask pin that comes with one if you purchase. I don't know how many they, retailers got, because I forgot to mention and ask, because somebody told me they had one waiting for me when I get to the store. But I did see it, and they sent me a picture, so I'll probably tweet that out later when the show goes live. But it is a really cool pin. Like I said, it's the red mask, and that's it, like off the turtle face. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's cool. That wasn't advertised as far as I know.
Not that because I was shocked when I found out about it too. Though I do think you're legally obligated not to ask about it because you hate pins. So,
well, I was gonna say, while I do hate pins, I'll take something for free.
There you go. Now, if they had done a sticker, see, what I think you should do is you should take that pin and then give it to me so I can have doubles, where anytime from here on out when stickers come out, I'll get it and I'll give you the double.
Well, they already know they give me any stickers that come into the store, so that's not. I don't need you to be my my sticker concierge, if you will.
Okay, fair enough.
But if you need me to be your pin mule, I will be.
Pin mule, right? Yeah. I could hear the keys clacking now. But anyway.
No, I already have 2 names written down for the show. You have to decide when we're done. You will already know listening to the show.
Right.
But Todd
I'll find out at the end.
The show is going to be, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So while you're over at longboxheroes.com, of course. Oh, you know what? Hang on. I want to, just before I go through that spiel, wind it back. Nice House by the Sea. Going to read that first issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
That might be one I end up sitting on.
And doing like, because it'll probably be 12 again.
Right. It'll probably be 6 break 6.
Right. But I mean, as a whole story, a 12-issue series, right?
I might wait till the first 6. Like, after reading the first issue, if I get a feel for it, I might just wait until the 6 issues are out and read those 6 issues in one clip.
Okay.
Because, we talked before that the previous one, while good with the delays and the break and the everything else like that, it felt as though it was something that would have benefited more if it was just an original graphic novel and you got to read that whole thing. And I get with suspense and everything else like that, but I'm going to play, I have that in my mind that might be an option that I might have to do when I read that first issue. I could read the first issue and be like, oh no, this is something that needs to be read day and date and we're not missing out.
Yeah. Definitely. And I just looked it up. It's definitely 12 issues, so probably a 6 break, like you said, that they're going to do.
So the spiel, while you're over at longboxheroes.com, be sure to check out all the other stuff that Todd and I are up to, whether it be past episodes of this show, past episodes of Longbox Heroes After Dark, and of course the current ongoing Todd and Joe Have Issues, where we are rereading all of Gail Simone's Secret Six, starting from the very beginning, and we are currently up to issue 13. Real quick, though, before we dive in, 2 things, one on topic, one off. How about Gail getting the invite to go to the Daredevil Wolverine premiere, huh?
Because didn't she write some Deadpool there?
She certainly did.
Cool beans. I'm glad she got to go. Yep. And she's going to be at the San Diego Comic-Con doing the panel with Minor Threats with Kyle Stark and who's Patton Oswalt. So I think she's got something going on there. And then on top of that, she has a Red Sonja novel coming out.
That's right. I don't think there's an official announced date of when that's coming out. They just put the cover and stuff. Oh, it's November. Mm-hmm. But she is Gail Simone is going to have a Red Sonja novel. I'm very excited for her. I will be 1,000,000% getting that.
I will be too. I don't know the last time I read a novel was, because I haven't had time. We do read so much and watch so much for this, like books, and some of my favorite writers have passed, so I haven't done it. I was like, Red Sonja, how great was that run that she did on that book? So I'm kind of really looking forward to this, and we'll be picking it up. And I'm sad because that is coming out in November.
Yes.
I was hoping that I figured she'll definitely be at New York pushing X-Men and stuff like that.
For sure.
That I would be hope to get the novel signed by her there. You know what I mean? But alas, I won't be able to.
We'll talk off air. Maybe use some of that Roker charm,
Mm-hmm. And when she was on Twitter the other day and she asked, like, hey, here's my novel. Like, am I a novelist now? Or do I have to wait until it's released? And I asked, I'm like, did the check clear? If yes, you're a novelist, right? And she goes, then I am novelist. She wrote back.
Oh,
like, all right, there you go.
So on topic, Secret Six, issue 13. Whilst I have not been loving the painted covers for this story arc, mm-hmm. I love Scandal's hair on the cover.
Oh, good.
It looks very beautiful and bouncy and has a lot of volume to it. I really like it.
Right. Right. Good stuff.
So this is the continuation of the push. Of course, we had the schism between the Six regarding who was going to fight against Mr. Smythe and his cronies. And we saw at the end of last issue that he has classic DC / Wonder Woman Amazon's villain Grendel under lock and key, ready to unleash on the world if things do not begin to go his way. Mm-hmm. And while some of the folks, specifically Catman, Deadshot, and Ragdoll, who are, kind of still in league with Mr. Smythe, the rest of the crew do not. And that is the Jeanette, Scandal, and Bane crew. Obviously, their focus is going to be getting the rest of the Amazons that are there freed. And, I think we're starting to see maybe the Catman side are starting to rethink their decisions, even though Ragdoll is attempting. And I knew this happened, and I thought it was supposed to happen in the last issue, but obviously it happens in this issue. Where Ragdoll is definitely trying on all of Wonder Woman's clothes.
Right, we get the boots and the tiara, but that's about it.
Before they finally stop him.
Mm-hmm.
But this is, the tale of those two stories going on. And then we have, kind of, I guess, what would be, because those aren't really the B plot. Like, there's not an A and a B plot. Those are like the 1A and the 1B, because they are the main stories. Everything's going to converge next issue. But we do get reminded that Leanna, the young lady who we were introduced to as the last time that anyone ever jumped out of a cake.
Right.
In issue 1 of Secret 6, where she is introduced as a love interest, possibly for Scandal. And, obviously Scandal is currently indisposed, but Leanna could certainly use some help with one of the folks that is maybe coming on just a bit too strong at the club that she works at, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's your sort of reminder of what's going on there. We do get a cool flashback scene, and it's not a different artist. It's still Nicola Scott. But the coloring on it and the warping of things, kind of like some of the stuff gets exaggerated a bit. This essentially is the story of how Scandal gets those funky gauntlets that she has, right?
Right.
She gets to kill a bunch of folks real cool there. Catman finally switches sides, and then this is where everything unofficially ties into Amazon attacks.
Mm-hmm.
Where all the Amazons that are on this island are Amazons that partook in what was perceived to be the attack on the United States, which is why they are there. But luckily they're all together and all on the same page because the Grendel is free and ready to destroy.
Right. I would like to say, because I do like to give credit where credit is due, those flashbacks with Scandal are drawn by Carlos Rodriguez.
Oh, thank you. My apologies.
No problem. Just like, you know what I mean? Don't want to give him this short shrift. But I do like everything that's going on in here. I'm with you on the story about Leanne, where she works. But my favorite bit is the bit where Scandal stands off with Bane and Jeanette against the guards. And she's like, what does she say exactly? It's like, what are we going to do? She's like, your orders, but your orders are no longer valid, but you have 30 seconds. And he's like, 30 seconds to what? And she's like, 30 seconds to call a loved one or perhaps pray, but 30 seconds ain't going to get you both. And I have goosebumps when the main guard is staring down Scandal and they have the two shots. Another good, the bad, and the ugly moment. And all the people are like, what are you doing? And he reaches into his belt and he's like, is he pulling out a gun? No, he's calling his wife. And he's like, it's me. I love you. And there's another person who has chosen to pray. Just the way that all thing is laid out and drawn, as I'm discussing it, I have my patented goosebumps on my arm, Joe.
Yes.
It's absolutely amazing. Such a great bit that I absolutely love. The kind of Big Todd energy that I've come to love from this book.
But yeah, this is the penultimate chapter of this story arc. I kind of said, one of the things that I liked about this was Gale is not sticking to the typical archetype of how things have to go sometimes with the story. Because next week's issue that we're going to be reading, issue 14, is the end of the first trade.
Right.
And, the current available collection that's out there, which is the first 14 issues, which is the first 2 story arcs, plus the, issue that happens in between. So we got, a 6 issue, a break, and a 7 issue, because that's what she needed to tell the story, so that's what she gets. We're not going to cram things. We're not going to stretch things out. And I really feel, especially with a modern writer, let's say within the last 20 years, when they go that route with their story, as opposed to, nope, it has to be 6 issues for the trade, or that's what it is. Yep. I know a lot of folks have more been going to the 5 issues for the trade even. But I say your story is your story. However many issues you need is whatever it needs to be. And if the publisher doesn't have your back, I don't know. Maybe tell the publisher to pound it.
That's why the best way to get this is in the omnibus, Joe. So you get plenty of storylines.
There you go. Exactly. Thank you. But yeah, like I said, issue 14 is next week. I don't think we got anything else to talk about for this issue, or
no. I'm good.
All right. So, hey, while you're over at Longbox Heroes, of course, longboxheroes.com, be sure to check out buying some of the shirts and pins and stickers we have available. Shoot me an email, shoot me a message. We'll work out a deal. I'll sell you some. Make any and all of your eBay purchases through our eBay affiliate link. This page contains affiliate links for eBay. We may receive a small commission on purchases that you make. You can use the link at any time to buy anything you want on eBay and support us at the same time.
Yeah.
But the best and most fruitful way to support us is to sign up for the Patreon at patreon.com/longboxheroes. For as little as $1 a month, you're going to get 2 bonus shows from Todd and myself. One being Previewing the Past, where we look at 30 years ago this month's previews catalog. The other, Comic Book Oddities, where we look at some of the more maligned, maybe forgotten, definitely pre-Marvel Cinematic Universe attempts to bring comics to the small or the silver screen. We just recorded, what's the official title of it?
Legends of the Superhero, both the Challenge and the Roast.
Legend of the Superheroes. I always want to say Super Friends, but that's the cartoon. That's the live action. Legend of the Superheroes, the Challenge and the Roast from 1979. If you've never seen it before, do yourself a favor and check it out. Mm-hmm. But also sign up for the Patreon to hear Todd and myself talking about it. Arguably, many are saying the best episode of the Comic Book Oddities that we've done to date.
Yes, if you need to know about gas prices in the 70s or Burma Shave, this is the show for you.
Yeah. Also, you're going to get the full scans of the previews catalogs that we talk about on Previewing the Past. You're going to get access to the soon-to-be-named network Discord. $5 a month is going to get you those 2 bonus shows 2 weeks before everyone else. And it's also going to get you After Dark 2 days before everyone else, so you can listen to the shows in the correct listening order. I go through a big, long, rambling piece on it on the on After Dark this week. You can sign up for free and get like the free posts and stuff. Obviously, if you're listening to this show, you're listening to After Dark. Those are 2 separate feeds. If you sign up for the free version of the Patreon, those 2 shows are on 1 feed. If you sign up for any level of the paid version of the podcast, you're going to get the bonus shows plus the main show plus After Dark all together on 1 feed. If you are someone who is tied to the feeds of your podcatcher, I don't know, maybe it's worth $1 a month to have them all on 1. Maybe it's not. I don't know how those sort of things work. If you want my way of doing things, you've heard it before, but I'll remind you again privately.
Yep. And if you go for the $100 tier, I think you could hear about realistic fake hair this week.
You could hear about that. You could hear about secrets of the upcoming Steel Stack show that are going to happen. All sorts of things.
Mm-hmm. Crazy stuff hits the floor, Joe.
That's right. So let's get into our TV talk from this past week. We have both the season finales of Star Wars: The Acolyte and The Boys. Let's get into to The Acolyte.
Sure.
Everything's said and done. We could wrap a bow on it. How do you feel on how it all wrapped up?
I really disliked the ending.
Okay.
I not that I hated it. Like, I'm not one of those, like, I just felt I didn't understand, not understand anything that was going on. Okay, I understand, Saul comes in, he makes his plea, and OSHA, turns on him. But, like, it just seems so weird. It's like, okay, so OSHA and May have flopped places. They've wiped May's brain, so they can't use her to find OSHA. It's just all of OSHA's heel turn in this. I don't feel it, if that makes any sense. It's not like it's not all there in the story, but it's just like in the last episode, it's like, oh, by the way, here I am. I'm this, and I make the lightsaber bleed, so it's red now, which I had to look up how that works. I was like, I don't care, if that makes any sense. Like, we came all this way to see one of the sisters go kind of good and with amnesia, and one of the sisters go bad. And I was like, it was a long way to go to get here.
I liked it. I felt the last episode was unsatisfying. I think that might be what you're looking for.
That's maybe a better term. Go ahead.
Yeah. Because, as you mentioned, we get the bit where OSHA wanted, as a child, she wanted to go with the Jedi. Everything that happens to that prevents her from becoming a Jedi, and now she gets to be a Jedi, but it's going to be an evil Jedi, a Sith, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, you never know how successful or unsuccessful these streaming shows are because there's no ratings, there's no whatever.
Right.
You just never know. And there's so many things that are teased and laid the groundwork for that. So there's more questions that are posed in this last episode than are answered in the entire season.
Right, and when you like you said, you have this as a season, you don't know if you're going to get a 2. If this was all stuff they did, and we'll get to it in season 4 of The Boys, we know we're getting a 5th and final season, so I'm fine with it. Lay a lot of questions, but we may never get a season 2 of Acolyte, and it's like, all right, we're going to have to weave these stories into other stories, if that makes any sense.
Right, because there is a creature in the cave that we see for the first time ever during the course of all of this.
That's Darth Plagueis.
Okay.
That's who the visual of what Darth Plagueis is supposed to look like looks like in the silhouette, if that makes any sense.
Okay.
So
then we have, and again I feel bad, she's like the head of the Jedi, she's the green lady.
She's bald She-Hulk, yes.
Where she gets the bit where it's revealed that the hot evil Sith was like her former pupil.
Yep, her Padawan.
Right. And obviously there's been no anything that leads to that moment. It's just like she sees him because he doesn't have the helmet on. She realizes he's there and she's like, oh, and recognize him and like, okay, they have some sort of connection. She mentions it passing later on in the episode.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's who Osha ends up going off with. The other sister whose name is escaping me right now.
May, who was the evil, who's good now.
Right. Not only is she good, she decides like, okay, just like, force lobotomize me.
Right. Identity crisis me so they can't use me to find you.
Right. Which again is a noble sacrifice, but that definitely feels like something that could be reversed or like unforced,
Mm-hmm.
Trying to think what else that I didn't like with this. So then we get the bit where this whole series has been predicated on the lies of the Jedi. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the season ends with more lies by the Jedi to cover up what Soul did.
Right. Because when bald She-Hulk shows up, I didn't like this. It's like an info dump for her, which she just shows up and she looks around the area and sort of force senses everything that happens. Like she gets the whole season of the show downloaded into her brain in 8 seconds, if that's any sense. She's like, oh, this happened over there and Saul did this. And even years ago, they murdered the mother. So she gets the whole story. She doesn't need to know anything. And then she proceeds to go, I have to cover all this up again. So more lies, and it just makes the Jedi look terrible.
Yeah.
Just completely terrible. And the only good thing is when the one senator comes earlier and comes to her and just rips them down, saying, like, all the things that you're doing, I don't know everything, but all your hubris and all this, it's going to be your undoing. And he's 100% right in 100 years. You know what I mean? So...
Right, he's eventually proven right.
Mm-hmm.
Vernesta is her name.
Mm-hmm.
So, obviously she has been a background player in a lot of this,
mm-hmm.
but then she becomes a much more important thing by the end of this, and she doesn't learn the lessons of what has come before in regards to the lies and everything that have been told by the Jedi.
Yeah, making Saul look terrible.
Right. In death, like, Saul was like at least a somewhat noble character who tried to fix the mistakes of his past.
Mm-hmm.
He ends up dying, and then his legacy is that she's like, oh yeah, he went crazy, he acted on himself, and it's his fault that all these other Jedis are dead. He acted alone without our knowledge. And, he must have... sent himself to Greenland by, of his own doing.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
The only one of the other cool things was when Osha turns bad, she figures out how to kill another Jedi without a weapon, which my brain never went to force choke.
Right, she's the inventor of the force choke.
Yep, there you go. So
we get like a bunch of like little lore bits during the course of this.
Mm-hmm.
And I groaned at the mid-credit cameo, I guess, of adult Yoda's back of his head.
Yeah, because I was like, if you're not going to use, like, it seems like they tried to do Luke Skywalker Mandalorian thing, like when he showed up, but at least he had a bat. Like, he didn't have like, oh, here it is. Like, here's an eighth of a second. You know, if we ever get a season 2, Yoda's going to show up. It's like, if you were gonna, like, you should have just had Yoda written on the door. You know what I mean? Like, and she's like, oh, I'm here to see Yoda. And like, oh, he's sleeping. And I would have been much better with that than having the back of his head show up.
Yeah.
I'm joking forced on that, but
yeah, it felt forced. I get where you're going from. The tease that Yoda is in this timeline, this whatever, as opposed to it closing on the back of his head.
Mm-hmm. I mean, because we know he's around. He was 800 or 900 at the time of Jedi. You know what I mean? Right. So it's like, I don't know. Should have just had R2-D2 show up. He's been around even longer than we knew, you know?
Or even we just hear the R2-D2 beep boop beep boop in the background.
Right, which is him cursing all the time.
It's something.
Mm-hmm.
But it was fine. It was good. I just felt unsatisfied when everything was done in regards to what we had gotten, what we should have gotten payoffs for, and, you know, new stuff that was introduced that we may never get a payoff for, you know?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. So I guess the other thing that we have to discuss would be the season finale for the boys.
Yep, the official title.
Yeah. Season 4, episode 8 finale.
Yep. We get a warning in the beginning.
Yes, I was going to say, do we chalk this up to more of the Todd was wrong categories?
I'll take my lost lap here.
Okay.
One of the worst predictions I have ever made. So nothing I predicted came true.
Well, now I'll give you this. You know, obviously we don't know for sure that the shapeshifter wasn't all of those people. We just weren't told here.
Right.
Which probably means that they aren't.
Probably.
And they weren't. But it still could be revealed, like, at the beginning of the next season where they go and, like, try to meet up with those people, and it turns out that they were shifted.
Right, which I don't think is going to happen now because they throw that out early in the episode. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Either way. So I messed up. I got a blemish on my record.
But this, and again, you know, obviously we're not going to go through the beat by beat. It's the season finales. You've been with us the whole time that we've been doing this stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was shocked at who was killed. I was shocked that the episode essentially ends on a downer. And this felt very Empire Strikes Back.
Sure, because we're going into the home stretch now, you know?
Yeah, this should have been the end of season 3 as opposed to the end of season 4, but I get why it is. Technically, season 1 and 2 are the first. Seasons 3 and 4 here are the second. We're ending that, and then season 5 is, you know, everything kind of hopefully fixing itself, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But none of, like, the main principal boys of the 7 died.
Right.
We do get some teases of some stuff, but it wasn't like how the Acolyte, where it was like, oh man, we get this tease of a thing that just gets introduced. Like, just as an example, okay?
Right.
The Ashley's story arc during all of this, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, she, you know, has been wanting to get out of this since the end of last season. She has opportunities to do so during the course of this season. Homelander has her put together a list. Always a good sign But a blonde-haired, blue-eyed looking guy like him says, put together a list of people for me.
Right.
And I love the bit where she's the one who gets the list. She gives it to Homelander. And the Deep is like, hey, shouldn't Ashley be on this list? She knows more about us than anyone, right?
Right.
And the Deep, oh, I love that his character is that he's so stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And he writes her name wrong on the top. He's like, oh, she should be at the top of the list. So he literally writes her name at the top of the list, spells her first name wrong, and doesn't know what her last name is.
That's funny. I don't think anybody does know, to tell you the truth.
Right, and that's the bit, but obviously him being the dumb one, to actually, outright acknowledge it, right? So then Ashley's like, okay, well, I could either leave or I could stay and take my chances. So she takes her chances. She goes into Homelander's, room or whatever it is at Vought Tower. She takes some of the Compound V. She starts having the reaction to it, and then we never see her again for the rest of the episode.
Right. We do see her wig fall off, though, Joe.
We do see her wig fall off, yes.
And her head start to, I don't know, creep around a bit. I'm not sure. Do you think she's going to get Medusa hair-like powers?
It'll be interesting to see what happens to her, right?
Right.
I feel so that is a good thing because, at least two other people, Zoe and Butcher, when they took the Compound V, they got tentacle-like powers. Mm-hmm. Butcher's comes out of his chest. Zoe's comes out of her mouth. Maybe they'll come on Ashley's head, right?
Right. But I do like the bit, too, that not only do they not know Ashley's last name, but Black Noir doesn't know who Ashley is and kills the Ashley that's not on the list.
Right, and who's Ashley's assistant, also named Ashley.
Who was actually good, and, Ash was like, I wish she could get out of here. And then Black Noir learns his special purpose.
The Naven Johnson of the Seven, yes.
You mean Black Noir is going to stay that color?
So there was a lot of quick hitter bits throughout this episode. I would say my favorite quick hitter bit was that since A-Train has abandoned the Seven, they're canceling his movie, which is already done. And they have just a quick, it's literally 3 seconds of Ashley being interviewed and saying, we'll make more as a tax write-off.
Right.
That's the most realistic thing that happened in this episode.
Yep, I want to see where it is. The tweet, and I love reading their tweets. I know it's a bit. He's like, the latest one was, Vought Studio wants to assure the fans that while we're canceling a completed training A-Train, we feel it's most respectful to the cast and crew to shelve the movie forever. That way, it can make the most money possible as a write-off! Exclamation point, Joe. Just their social media team is absolutely brilliant. So,
yep.
But
and then with our heroes, the boys, everybody kind of gets an emotional touchstone moment, except for MM, sadly.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously Huey and Annie do. Obviously contentious because it's revealed. And how Huey figures out that it's a shifter and not really Annie. But obviously Annie takes things the wrong way. And again, it's late in the show. This isn't dirty or anything else like that. But the line where Annie says, I don't want to be getting no shifter syphilis. Was a great line. Billy gets a moment with Huey about the topless steakhouse in Nevada that I think we'll end up seeing in season 5.
Right.
He gets the moment with his son, which, again, ends up turning sour. And
that scene, I just want to hit on that scene.
No, go for it.
Where Butcher brings him in and he wants to talk to him. And for the one guy who's done everything wrong to this point, Joe, he's the one guy doing it the right way. Like when he's like, oh, we got to do this, and Grace just had the woman who kind of raised them to was like as a grandmother, just starts rushing it, and Butcher's like, slow down. She's like, we don't have time for this, and Butcher's like, it's not going to go well, and Butcher is right for one of the few times like where he's 100% right on. And when Ryan throws Grace and cracks her neck and leaves, like I feel that is, and I don't know how like the boys ended in the book, but it does not, he can't have a redemption arc now, because when he killed his mother, it was an accident. He lashed out. When he done Grace in, he didn't have to. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I don't know my own strength, but I just feel like, oh man, maybe we can bring him back. But in Todd's eyes, Ryan's gone.
I don't think he's gone, but I just think it's going to be tougher to redeem him. Right? That also being said, you know, when that does happen with Ryan, that's when Butcher finally has to give in and be like, all right, Joe, Negan, I'm going to give you control. And it's one of those things where Billy on his deathbed looks terrible, looks haggard. You could see it in his eyes. But the other thing that's the tell when he shows up and he's given control over to whatever is inside of him, he has no more gray hair.
Right. And he kind of walks different too. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't have, and we joke, he doesn't have the Butcher slither or even the strut. I feel like Negan taught him how to walk like him. Do you know what I mean? I don't know how to explain it, but it just seems like he's not Butcher when he's even just moving. It's really weird.
Right. And he's got the virus. He's on his own. He comes in and he grabs Val and just Victoria rather, and just rips her in half. But now everything is falling into place because obviously with and again I forget the guy who ends up, I'm looking through my notes here. Singer ends up being the president. The plan has always been get Singer into office. With Victoria as the vice president, kill Singer. Now we have a Soup as the president. With Sage gone, they're on the Vaught News Network. And to out her and expose her, Homelander just zaps her right in the face with his eye beams. Which normally would kill someone, but she just kind of like shrugs it off.
Right.
And that exposes her. Singer has to go into hiding. She has to go into hiding. But Sage shows back up, and she's like, I had a bunch of other stuff planned that I didn't tell you about, Homelander, because I knew you would mess it up. But now, with Singer in prison, because he now is framed for killing Victoria, with Victoria dead, the next person in line is the Speaker of the House, and he's on the phone right now to pledge his allegiance to you, Homelander.
Yep, he's been kind of in their pocket since season 1, to tell you the truth, when they blackmail them. So now, essentially, just real quick before we end the show, and you know, any other closing thoughts or anything else like that, of all the moments that everyone gets, I talked about it last week, talking about this week. I love that Frenchie and Kamiko got that moment last week. They got that moment this week. And obviously, what happens at the very end doesn't directly only affect them. It affects everyone. But I'm glad they didn't have their moment ruined. Right. And to me, the most emotional moment in all of the boys' finale is the bit. Okay, so we say that they, you know, it all goes sideways and the boys scatter to the winds. We're going our different ways because this is all gone.
It's very clear with the Speaker of the House as the president. He's been in the pocket of the Seven and specifically Homelander. Homelander is essentially the president of the United States now.
Right. So
and they're going to start rounding up anyone who is a dissenter, anyone who has been against them, and that is the non-superpowered members of the boys.
Mm-hmm. So when they all go their separate ways and they all get captured through various means, except for Butcher. Butcher has the virus and he's going off on his own. They take each of them, and Annie gets away because she ends up using her powers because one of the Soups, who was all the way back when with Lamplighter when they busted them out of the home for them, has the telekinesis power. She's like, I can't go up against him. Leaves, so they get Huey. You know, obviously MM gets captured in the worst way possible for him, meeting an old foe, and Frenchie and Kamiko. They're going off. They're leaving, and basically the person with like preacher-like powers, if they touch it, they can make you do that. So walks up, touches Frenchie, and Frenchie whispers, just turns away, and they grab Kamiko, and Kamiko screams no. And I got goosebumps because it's like it took 4 seasons and 1 fake out in there when she was like having hallucinations to have her actually scream, and it's scream no to Frenchie as they're taking him away. It was dusty onions in the house, Joe. I love Kamiko, and I wasn't even for a Frenchie Kamiko relationship, but after they went through that and they finally helped each other and then kissed, man, oh man, was it tough to see Kamiko's first words after all those years scream no. Oh, such a good scene.
I feel over these last 4 seasons, Huey has grown.
Mm-hmm.
Annie is growing. Like, she still hasn't figured it out yet.
Mm-hmm.
But she definitely had some moments where, like, she is dealing with her past and dealing with, you know, not having her powers and everything else like that. MM has been forced to grow.
Right.
Billy has regressed. But Kamiko and Frenchie, whether it be together or separately, have grown the most as characters throughout these 4 seasons.
Billy hasn't grown. He has a growth. That's the difference.
There you go.
Well, yeah, I'm with you with everything else you said.
Yeah. So, you know, and obviously we get that bit where, you know, obviously MM gets picked off at the airport. You know, Huey and Annie get separated. Frenchie and Kamiko get separated. Ryan is still out there. Billy is still out there with the virus and with the powers and with the new lease on life. So again, it was a great cliffhanger ending if you've invested these 4 seasons in this show, which I hope you have invested these 4 seasons in the show up to this point. You know, and that's, I think, the main difference between the Acolyte having all these little dangling threads and plot holes and so on and so forth, where we have been traveling and growing and caring for these characters for a variety of reasons and so forth. And to see this moment happen at the end, to see them all separated and to see them all pulled apart, like they're only as strong as they are separately is when they're together. And right. It ends with them being ripped apart by Homelander, who is in charge. Things have never looked more bleak for our heroes. And this is where they pull themselves up the most by their bootstraps, you know?
Right. And the most horrific thing, Joe, filming for season 5 isn't slated to start, and I read it today, until October or November of 2025.
That's okay.
So we won't see any new boys in the finale until like spring of 26, like probably summer of 26. That's too long for me. I need it now. Hook it to my veins.
I know, but it's been about 2 years in between each season. I understand how these things work. It's going to be okay. We'll have other things to fill in those spots of our heart until the next season The Boys comes out 2+ years from now.
Right. I wonder if there's anything we could watch until then.
Yes. Well, you know, this weekend, the Deadpool 3 Wolverine 3 comes out, because this is technically the 3rd Wolverine movie, right?
No, 4th.
4th, that's right, because Old Man Logan was one.
Right. One of the best comic book movies ever made. But go ahead.
Right. So that comes out this weekend. It looks good that I'll be getting a chance to see it, so we could talk about that next week here. And then next week, the Batman Caped Crusader show that was supposed to be on WB or whatever is now going to be on Amazon Prime. That starts next week, but they're dumping all 10 episodes at once. And sometimes that's tough for us to talk about because sometimes some of us could just sit down and watch all 10 episodes, and some of us, unfortunately, can't.
Right. So we'll figure that out as it comes.
Right, we'll figure that out as it comes. And then depending on how we handle that and what we do there, the next real thing that comes up is the Colin Farrell Penguin show on HBO Max.
Right.
Yeah. But that's not for like that's like a month and a half away.
Right. That's a bridge we'll cross when we come to it.
Exactly. So no rest for the wicked here when it comes to TV and movies, because then that rolls right into Agatha, and then Agatha rolls into, at the very least, Craven.
Oh my goodness! I hope they do. Could that be catch the Madam Web wave, and be the next Madam Web?
They need to put out another bad trailer like the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Because that first trailer for the Craven movie was really bad.
What?
They need to put out another trailer for Craven that's like somehow worse.
Mm-hmm. You mean by just showing any more of the movie?
Right. I think you just put out the same trailer that they did originally, and you just put at the beginning from the people that brung you Madam Web.
Right. I'm fine with that. That might be Craven might be one that we have to go to the drive-in to watch and record our thoughts.
No, it doesn't come out until the second week in December, so there are no drive-ins.
And you know what I found out that we can do, Joe, and I don't know how much it costs, but I know we can rent a theater and watch whatever movie we want.
Yeah.
And if we're going to do that, I don't want to do Craven. I want to do a double bill of Megaforce and Dick Tracy. So that would be where I'd spend my money.
All right. I was going to say Rocky Horror Picture Show and Megaforce, but I'll take Dick Tracy and Megaforce.
I'll do that, and I'll do that quicker. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Barry Bostwick, too.
Yeah.
All right. I guess that's everything.
That is everything. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Hope you enjoyed the show this week. This was episode 720 of Longbox Heroes. For Todd, this is Joe saying we'll see y'all here next week.
Remember, be a faucet, not a drain.
You're listening to the soon-to-be-named network, the Lamborghini of podcast networks.
The Rob is a Longbox hero. The Rob is a Longbox hero. He gives us five stars.